Have you ever walked away from a conversation, not knowing why it felt like you lost? Even though you said everything you needed to, even though you weren't wrong, even though you kept your calm, smiled gently, and nodded at the right moments. But inside, there was a cut, faint, deep, invisible to everyone else. There were times you entered a room where your voice disappeared into loud laughter, razor-sharp arguments, and glances that decided who you were in a matter of seconds. You tried to speak up, then stopped, because deep down, you knew not everyone truly listens. You thought you were choosing silence out of composure, but the truth is, you stayed quiet out of fear. Fear of being dismissed, fear of being met with pity, fear that the moment you opened your mouth you wouldn't be able to protect yourself from the undercurrents pulling beneath their words. And slowly, you started to believe, I'm too soft, I'm not smart enough, I can't argue well, I'm not strong enough. But if Nietzsche were here, he'd whisper to you, silence is not absence, it is an overwhelming presence. You didn't lose because you didn't fight back. You only lose when you believe you're supposed to win. Maybe you once thought saying nothing meant giving up, but tell me, what rattles someone more than not knowing what you're thinking? Silence, in the hands of someone who understands it, is not surrender. It's a strategy. This video won't teach you to be louder. It won't tell you to speak at the perfect moment or win the argument perfectly. It's here to remind you, you don't need to say a word to make the entire room fall silent. And if you've ever been overlooked, if you've ever been the kind soul dismissed, the quiet one drowned out by the noise, then maybe this video isn't like the ones you've seen before. But maybe it's exactly the one you've been waiting for. There are rooms you walk into, and from the very first moment, you know exactly where you're expected to be. No one points, no one gives orders, but you understand instinctively. Don't speak too much. Don't make anyone uncomfortable. Don't draw attention to yourself. From an early age, you learn to observe instead of express. You didn't stay silent because you had nothing to say, but because you knew your presence was never designed to take up space. You chose to be wise, but beneath that wisdom was fear. You've said the wrong thing before, been misunderstood, been met with silence, been laughed at for not matching the mood. And from then on, you learn to step aside. You learn to be agreeable. You learn to dissolve. You became the kind one, the easy one, the one who never asks for too much. But deep inside, something in you has been slowly dying. Every time you stay silent when your voice should have spoken, every time you smile to soften someone's contempt, you're turning away from yourself. You think you're being strong, but in truth, you're surviving cleverly, like a child who was once hurt and now believes safety means never being seen as a threat. Nietzsche didn't teach you how to fit in. He taught you how to be dangerous through stillness, through non-reaction, through seeing straight through someone's mask without ever needing to tear it off. He said, do nothing, and you'll see who's truly losing control. The one who rushes to speak, the one who constantly justifies, the one who always needs to prove, they're the ones afraid. But you, if you're calm enough not to be pulled in, deep enough to simply observe, you'll realize every social game is a test of inner power. Silence is not the absence of voice. Silence is when you no longer need words to hold your position. When others begin adjusting their behavior simply because they can't read your thoughts. When the stillness in your eyes makes them look inward. And maybe, for the first time, they see something. That you're not as weak as they assumed. That you know more than you say, and that you can break them without ever lifting a finger. Have you noticed the most dangerous people are often the quietest? They don't rush to speak in every conversation. They don't always need to be right. They never try to appear knowledgeable, because real knowing doesn't need to perform. In a world where everyone's desperate to prove themselves, the one who masters silence holds the greatest power. Nietzsche once wrote, "The strongest is the one who says nothing, because their weight lies in their presence." You think power comes from persuasion or manipulation, but the deepest form of power is self-mastery. It's when you no longer need to control others, because you've already mastered yourself. It's the patience not to react, the calmness to hear what's hidden beneath someone's words, the clarity to know most speech is just defense. People don't talk to reveal themselves. They talk to hide. The one who needs to prove they're smart is terrified of being underestimated. The one who constantly interrupts can't stand silence. The one who dominates a room is afraid of letting others exist. But if you're steady enough, you don't need to force your presence. You just have to be there. Silent, sharp, perceptive. Like Nietzsche. Like a blade that's never drawn, yet everyone can feel it. When you're no longer moved by praise or insult, you'll start seeing people expose their true nature far quicker than you'd expect. Shallow minds can't stand space. They fill it with noise. But deep minds see silence as a mirror, a space to hear their soul. A space to read what others are trying not to say, and then you'll understand. What's truly powerful is never loud. A tsunami doesn't scream. It rises in absolute stillness. One glance, if it's honest enough, can unnerve someone more than 1,000 words. One sentence, if it's been held in your chest long enough, can shift an entire conversation. No need to rush, no need to force. Just be deep enough and you'll realize your silence isn't a lack. It's a language, a presence that makes those who rely on noise suddenly feel hollow. You don't speak, not because you have nothing to say, but because you've been interrupted too many times to believe your words hold value. You don't react, not because you don't feel, but because every time you showed anger, someone told you you were being too much. So you chose silence. You chose to observe. And slowly, without anyone telling you, you taught yourself to shrink, like a dried leaf in the wind, just trying to survive. Nietzsche once said, "Man is the creature who hides behind reason. But behind that reason lies an ocean of emotion that never got a name." Maybe you think you're calm, but that's because you were taught that showing emotion is weakness. Maybe you think you're sharp, but that's because you've been deceived so often you no longer trust kind words. Everything you display today isn't your nature. It's the result of what you've had to survive. Your coldness was once a wound. Your intellect was once a shield. Your silence was once a scream no one heard. You're not numb. You just loved too deeply and were left too suddenly. You're not gifted at reading people. You just grew up in a world where reading the room was the only way to stay safe. You don't enjoy being alone. You just stopped believing anyone would stay long enough. That's the unconscious at work. The things you thought were choices are reflexes. Commands etched into your brain when you were too young to question them. Don't cause trouble. Don't speak too much. Don't let anyone down. And you obeyed, not with logic, but with instinct. Nietzsche called it the corruption of instinct. When we've lived so long in society, we forget the wild voice of the soul. You think you're in control, but really, you're conditioned. You react like a mirror, reflecting your environment more than reflecting yourself. And so, you keep living as someone who appears in control, but feels empty. As someone others respect, but no one understands. as someone who knows how to survive, but has never felt truly alive. No one ever told you that living authentically doesn't mean struggling to be seen. It means staying still, even when no one is clapping. No one told you that a steady gaze comes from a soul that's been shattered and no longer wants to run. You think Nietzsche was a cynic, but he was simply someone who touched the bottom of absence, the place where the soul stops pretending, and every power game is exposed as a clumsy act. And maybe you're already on your way there too. Imagine a chessboard, not between two players, but a whole room. Everyone who passes by makes a move. No one speaks, no one meets eyes, but every glance falls on you. You sit there like a piece that's never been moved, still, composed, not a flicker of expression. Others think you're not playing, but in truth, you've seen the entire board. You've seen who's rushing, who's hiding, who's reacting too fast, who's too afraid to sit in silence. The clock keeps ticking. No one pressures you, yet everyone grows uneasy because you haven't responded. They don't know what you're thinking, and that alone shakes their footing. You stay silent, not to avoid the game, but to watch it, to see past the layers they've built, to hear the things they never say. Someone approaches, wearing a friendly smile. You nod, without replying. They step back, their eyes change, because they realize you don't need them to define you. You don't need acceptance to feel valuable, and that unsettles them, not because you threaten them, but because you don't depend on them. More people enter. The air shifts. Something compresses, as if your silence has become a mirror, forcing everyone to confront themselves. Some start speaking louder. Some crack jokes. Some interrupt just to fill the gap. But that emptiness isn't yours. It's theirs, born from their inability to be seen without reflection. You don't have to prove anything, but your grounded stillness becomes the center of gravity. A quiet kind of authority. No spotlight, no stage, yet no one can ignore it. Outside, the rain begins to fall. Each drop taps the glass roof like a slow, deliberate rhythm. You're still there, breathing steadily, like someone who no longer waits to be heard, but chooses to see instead. No resistance, no grasping. And yet, beneath it all, you're holding on to the pure shape of who you are. And then, just when it seems like nothing is happening, someone steps forward. Says nothing, just stops in front of you. No smile, no act. They simply look at you as if, for the first time, someone understands. Presence without words is the most dangerous way to be real. You used to think silence was weakness, that if you didn't push back, you'd be disrespected. That being smart meant knowing when to speak, how to reclaim control. But what if all of that was just a game you're no longer interested in playing? Maybe you're not weak. You've just seen too much. You've seen conversations that looked sincere turn out to be velvet-wrapped weapons. You've seen relationships that seemed genuine fall apart the moment you stopped being convenient. You've seen that those who talk the most are often the most terrified of facing the truth. And so, you began stepping back. Not because you lost, but because you no longer wanted to win by their rules. You no longer need to win a conversation. You just want to win with yourself by not betraying the quietest part of you. Nietzsche once said, "The strongest is the one who stands still." And now you understand. Stillness isn't about doing nothing. It's about refusing to react the way they want. Refusing to be dragged into the chaos of people who haven't met themselves. Refusing to explain what doesn't need defending, because what's real never requires proof. You used to think they were judging you for staying quiet. But the truth is, you unsettle them because of that silence. People aren't afraid of what's said. They're afraid of what they can't predict. And you are the gap they cannot grasp. The truth is, you weren't pushed away because you were too kind. You were excluded because you stopped being easy to read. And in a world obsessed with obedience, the most dangerous thing is someone who no longer needs approval. You once believed you needed love to survive, but your existence never required permission. All it ever needed was for you to stop trying to be the right one and start showing up as your real self. You don't need to change your whole life overnight. You only need to begin with one small thing. Write down one moment when you said yes, while deep down you wanted to say no. Don't explain it. Don't justify it. Just name it. Like an old wound that needs to be reopened. Not to blame, but to breathe. Because some pain doesn't need fixing. It just needs to be seen. You can start by practicing intentional silence. Not the silence that avoids, but the silence that protects your energy. The next time you're about to respond, just to keep someone else happy, pause. Ask yourself, what am I trying to preserve? And what am I sacrificing to keep it? Then choose one day to disappear. Not to make anyone panic. Not to be understood. Just a day with no social media, no messages, no plans. Just you and the room. Close the door. Face what you've been hiding. Write it down. Burn it if you need to. Not for anyone to read, but for you to stop pretending. Try sitting in the dark. No blue screens. No sound. Just your breath. Name the roles you've carried and quietly ask, who am I still holding on to that I no longer need? You might see a scared child, a part of your personality that got squeezed into silence, a rage that had to be buried just so you could be praised for being calm. Let them surface. Don't label them. Don't chase them away. Don't try to understand them all at once. Carl Jung called it shadow integration. Not to make you dark, but so that you're no longer controlled by what you've denied. Every time you admit the truth about yourself, you reclaim power from the hands of your past. And if there's one ritual simple enough for you to try tonight, let it be this. Before bed, write down one thing you suppressed today, an emotion you weren't allowed to say, a reaction you swallowed, a desire you thought you shouldn't have. Then whisper, I see you now. You don't have to be okay. You just have to stop pretending. Because healing doesn't come from erasing the pain. It comes when you stop letting the pain decide who you are. If there were no one left for you to hold it together for, no more roles to maintain, no more praise to chase after, then what would be left of you? Would you dare to sit with yourself when there's no expectation left to lean on? Would you dare to face the part of you you once abandoned without turning away? Maybe you've lived a long time believing you needed a reason just to exist. You had to be useful. You had to be pleasant. You had to make others feel comfortable. But if one day no one needed you anymore, what would you come face to face with first? Loneliness or yourself? Maybe you don't have the answer yet. You don't need to. But if that question made you pause, then maybe, just maybe, you've already started to see. You've been silent for a long time, not because you're weak, but because you learned to hide yourself to survive. But you know something, that silence has a soul, and now it's asking for its voice back, not to scream, but to exist, not to be validated. But so you stop disappearing from your own life. Nietzsche never wrote for the weak. He wrote for those brave enough to look into the abyss within themselves and not turn away. He didn't teach you how to win with words. He taught you how to master your inner world so deeply that others wouldn't dare to enter it. The silence you need isn't about avoidance. It's a wall no one can see, where others collapse under the weight of their projections. It's the silence of someone who's realized, I don't need to be understood. I don't need to react just to prove I'm still alive. I don't need to defend myself to salvage what's already lost. You don't have to fight back. You don't have to raise your voice. You don't have to seek justice in every conversation. You only need to stand still, in a depth others can't reach. And then you'll start to see. Those who demand your reaction are the ones who thrive on control. But when you stop reacting, when you stop giving your energy, they have nothing left to hold on to. They're forced to return to themselves. And sometimes, that's what terrifies them most. You don't need to be likable. You just need to be untouchable, not by fighting back, but by stepping away from the table where they play their little games. From this moment on, your silence is no longer a shield. It's a choice, a quiet declaration that says, I no longer live to please anyone. I live so I no longer betray myself. You don't need to understand everything. You don't need to be strong right now. You don't need to know what your next step is. You only need to pause, listen, and admit one small truth, that at some point you lost yourself, not in anger, but in appeasement. Not because you were weak, but because you once believed kindness was the only way not to be abandoned. But Nietzsche never urged people to live for acceptance. He spoke of another kind of life, one guided by your own will, even if it means standing alone in a crowd. You don't need to rush forward. Just choose one quiet moment today. Sit down and write about one time you tried to be agreeable, just so someone else wouldn't feel uncomfortable. Don't judge yourself. Don't try to fix it. Just write and let it be seen. If this video stirred something inside you, stay a little longer. Not for us, for you. Because maybe the next video will take you one layer deeper than you've ever gone. A door that needs no key, only the courage to stay in the dark long enough to finally see.